Alright, so this is a video requested just on how to solve for a variable in a basic equation, and there are going to be a couple of different examples that we'll run through for this, but it's pretty straightforward, and this is probably in like the Algebra 1 slash pre-algebra area. I'm going to try and create some steps for this that might help. Alright, so step 1 here. What you have to do is you have to see if your variable is in the denominator. Because if your variable is in the denominator, that means that your first step is to get it out of the denominator. Okay? So if there is a variable in the denominator, we have to get it out of this denominator. Basically, solving for a variable is to do everything you can in opposites to slowly get this alone. Okay? So step 1 is get the variable out of the denominator. Variable out of the bottom or the denominator. Either way, I don't really know what terms you're comfortable with, but we'll go ahead and go with this. Alright, so get the variable out of the bottom or out of the denominator. To do that, you're going to have to do the opposite. So this is like 4 divided by 5x. So the opposite of division would be hopefully multiplication. Alright, so the opposite of division is multiplication. You should know that. So what you're going to do is instead of dividing by 5x, I need you to multiply by 5x. Alright, so we multiply. Alright, and now we'll just go ahead and simplify that out a little bit. 5x times 4 is 20x. Alright, remember you just multiply the coefficients, the letter's just going to stay the same. And this is all still over 5x. Alright, and then over here 8 times 5x, remember we just multiply our coefficients, 8 times 5 is 40, so you get 40x. From here now we just have to do a little bit of division, so over here 20 divided by 5 gives you 4, and x divided by x, the x's will cancel out. So you don't even have an x over here, and that was the whole purpose. Okay, and over here is still just 40x. So one thing I want to note is that this was the purpose. When that x cancels out with that x, that's why we do this multiplication process. Because remember, you're trying to move your x instead of it being on the denominator here at the bottom. You want it to be somewhere else, just not in the bottom of a fraction. So these cancel out, and you'll notice that your x moves over here. It's no longer in the bottom of a fraction. That was your goal. So as long as you pull that off, you're all good. All right, and from here now, you use, again, it's a matter of opposites. So this is 40 times x. To get this x alone, I just had to do the opposite. So the opposite of times 40 would be divided by 40. I guess I did that in the wrong color. Divided by 40. All right, and we do that on both sides. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do the other side. And now it's some simplification. All right, so step 2 is just simplify. Step 2 is simplify. Alright, so now we just go 4 divided by 40, which you could get a decimal for here, but I think your teacher's probably going to want a fraction. Typically, I like to work in fractions anyways. So 4 goes into both 4 and 40. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 40 divided by 4 is 10. And then over here, 40 divided by 40, they're the same number, so anything divided by itself equals 1. So this is just a 1x or an x. I'm just going to write x. You can write 1x, but most teachers prefer just x. So that would be the end of this one. So let me go ahead and get this whole thing on screen real quickly. All right. There we go. I'll just get the steps on screen. You don't really need the title. All right. So solving for a variable. And this is just when it's in the denominator. Alright, so you want to get the variable out of the bottom, and the typical process is just to do the opposites of processes that you see. Start with wherever your variable is, and do the opposite. So instead of dividing by 5x, multiply. Instead of, multiplying by 40, divide by 40, etc., etc. That's how you cancel things out. Everything in mathematics has an opposite. Okay? So go ahead and pause it on this page, or feel free to rewind. I'm going to go ahead and do this other example real quickly. Alright, so this other example that I was asked about looked like this. Let's see. So it'd be something like, and I'm just going to pick some random numbers, 8c over, I don't know, 3 equals, 6. Okay. And this is not going to turn out to be a pretty number because your examples don't really turn out to be pretty numbers either. This is an example where your answer is not going to turn out pretty. But we're going to do the same thing. So it's pretty much the same process, but here's the question. Remember our first step earlier was get the variable out of the bottom. So in this example, do I have a variable in my denominator or in the bottom? No, I don't. There's not a single letter down here in the bottom of this fraction. So this actually makes our life really easy. In that case, we're just going to do our opposites. So start really close to your variable. Here's your c, right? So we've got an 8 and a 3. This one is 8 times c, and this is c divided by 3. So let's go ahead and start with our division. What's the opposite of divided by 3? Hopefully you know that the opposite of dividing by 3 would be multiplying by 3. So let's go ahead and multiply both sides by 3. Alright, so this 3 and that 3 will cancel out. Alright, so they will cancel out. It did the same thing in the other problem, I just went a little step further, but if you can just get used to the fact that these cancel out whenever we do opposites, this will make your problem faster. So you're just left with 8c. Okay, oh, sorry, almost the wrong color. And again, just in case you're uncomfortable with how to get 8c there, just me crossing out the 3's, let's pretend real quickly that I didn't cross out the 3's. So instead I did the math. So here's a new page real quick. So let's pretend I didn't cancel out the 3's. What I would do is I would get 3 times 8c all over 3. 3 times 8 is 24 all over 3. And then you'd have to simplify. What is 24 divided by 3? 24 divided by 3 gives you 8. So you would get 8c. So you'll notice that regardless of whether or not you cancel out the 3's and you realize 8c is all that's left, or if you actually do the math, you'll get 8c. So it's easier this way, because you can immediately be like, well, cross that out, all I'm left with is this. But you can do the math for it. Okay? Feel free to pause here if you need. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So after you've canceled out your 3's like this, we had to do it on this side as well. Because the 8c, we left it over, so it's not, nothing's happening with it yet. But there is something that's happening over here. What is 6 times 3? Hopefully you know that 6 times 3 is 18. Okay? 6 times 3 should be 18. Alright? Very, very last step. Again, you look where your variable is. It's over here. We need to get it alone. This is 8 times c. So what's the opposite of 8 times c? It would be divided by. So we want to divide by 8 here. Okay? Remember, the last thing you want to do is touch your variable. You really don't want to do anything with your variable unless it's in the bottom. If you see your variable or your letter in the bottom or the denominator of a fraction, then we want to move it around and all kinds of things. But if it's in the top, I'm so sorry. If it's in the top, don't do anything with it. All right, mess with everything else first. So we multiplied by the 3. Now we're going to divide by 8. That was supposed to be an orange. I messed that up. Oh well. Kind of works. All right, 8 divided by 8 here is going to cancel out. So 8 divided by 8 is just 1. You're left with c. And over here, 18 divided by 8, it doesn't exactly divide evenly, but it does simplify. So to simplify a fraction, you have to ask yourself what number goes in at both 18 and 8. If you don't have your divisibility rules memorized, that's okay. They're both even numbers, so I know that 2 goes into both of them. All right, so 18 divided by 2. So 2 goes into both of them. 18 divided by 2 gives you 9, and 8 divided by 2 gives you 4. That would be your final answer. Okay? 2 types of fractions. This one's already on a full page, so the steps are pretty much the same. This is just a wrap-up, so you don't really have to listen to this if you're already pretty comfortable with this. But the idea is that you have to get the variable out of the bottom first. Get it out of the bottom. Okay? As soon as you do that, you mess with every number that's near the variable, but you don't actually do anything to the variable. Okay? And to get rid of all those numbers next to the variable, we keep doing opposites. Instead of multiplying by 40x, we divide by 40. Instead of dividing by 3, we multiply by 3. Instead of multiplying by 8, we divide by 8. This would happen with addition and subtraction too. So if this were like 18 plus 3, or I'm sorry, if this were like 8c plus 3, we'd want to subtract 3. 8c minus 15, we'd want to add 15. So you're just doing a bunch of opposites. Okay? Hopefully this made sense. Let me know if you had any issues, and I'd be happy to help out. Good luck.